Right, so I'm gonna quickly introduce Charlie, okay, if that's okay for everyone. So Charlie is the author of this book, Men Down, a guide for men on mental health. And it's amazing, as I have explained to you before, because it helps communication with men actually, and we all somehow related to men, father, brother, grandfather. So in all these types of relationships, we relate to men, and sometimes we think differently. And I think it's very interesting because a lot of pressure could come to men from not understanding them, and a lot of stress for women as well, right? So, but I'm not the one that's going to be talking today. We're going to hear from the author, Charlie, who had this amazing idea. I'm going to give you some opportunity for you to say something before I ask you. So if you want to say something before I ask you something.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm intrigued as to, what questions people come up with as well. So I'd welcome everyone to ask anything. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I'm very open, and I will try my best to answer any questions you have about me, about my experience, about male mental health generally. Well, I guess maybe I should give a bit of background as to me. So I am 36. I met Vivian on the Masters in Positive Psychology and coaching psychology. And I guess, so I wrote this book last year, in the summer of last year. And the reason I did it is because I've had a lot of issues with anxiety over many years and bouts of depression. And I just kind of recognized the fact that men generally, everyone knows the suicide statistics of men across the world are pretty terrifying. 3 times as many men kill themselves as women. So there's clearly a problem there. And I fundamentally believe that the main challenge is that men are trying to live up to a traditional form of stereotypical masculinity, which kind of prevents them from opening up, prevents them from being vulnerable, prevents them talking and asking for help when they need it. So I guess the reason I wrote the book is to provide information for men that's very accessible and to challenge that male stereotype. Hopefully in doing so, enable or encourage other men to open up, because I personally have found that discussing my emotional health has been very beneficial for me. I have, it not only has it helped me through dealing with depression and anxiety and finding the help that I've needed, it's also enabled me to help other people. So by being vulnerable with friends of mine has enabled them to be vulnerable with me and vulnerable with other people as well. So there's this wonderful kind of multiplying effect of vulnerability. So I'm a massive advocate of that, of vulnerability. And I guess that kind of gives you an overview of the book. And I hope it helps a lot of men. And I think, as Vivian said, I think a lot of women can not only use the tips and tricks in there as well for themselves, but I think around the masculinity piece, I think it will help, hopefully it will help women understand men a bit better as well, and perhaps why they have been so emotionally closed. That gives you a bit of an introduction, hopefully. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. Actually, you answered some questions that I was going to ask you about why you wrote the book, so I think I skipped that one.
That's fine.
I was going to say introduce a bit, and there's one thing I would like to ask before I give to the girls. How does the book, because we study positive psychology, how does the book relate a little bit with positive psychology? I know are you a psychologist, or your background psychologist as well?
No, it's not. My background is business. So I've been in business for 15 years, in big corporates to startups. Most recently running.
Okay. But you're talking about, can you explain a little bit how which line of psychology is your book related to? Because we have this mainstream psychology and we have this positive psychology. So what is there a little bit of positive psychology in your book?
Yes, I mean, I think there's probably a bit of both. You know, there's a bit of traditional psychology in that it looks at mental health disorders or illnesses, and management of those, as well as more positive psychology aspects like how to fundamentally improve your well-being regardless of whether you are mentally ill, which is what traditional psychology focuses on. So I have a section in the book which is all about self-care, and it's tips and tricks to help people manage their emotional health, and particularly men. I think just comes up with lots of ideas and things that people can try, and I very much emphasize in that every person, every man or woman is completely unique, and so their experience of emotional health, of mental health, is unique, and consequently their what they will use to manage it will also be unique. So there is no one size fits all. Every single case is completely unique. So people have to try the tips and tricks, the positive psychology interventions that work for them. And I guess if they find a set that works, keep using them. I like to think of it, and I mentioned this in the book as well, as like having kind of 5 a day for the brain. You know, we're told often that we're meant to have, you know, the government guidelines, 5 fruit and veg a day to remain healthy and get our nutrition in. And I think we need to have the same regard for our emotional health. We need to be thinking, okay, what 5 things can I do?
What is the 5 a day? Give us a tip.
You know, in the UK, we say, you know, the government advises, that they have done for many years, we should have 5 fruit and vegetables a day.
Oh yeah, but what is your 5 a day for the psychology then?
Well, I think mine vary, but it's just a kind of a tool that I talk to people about, particularly when I'm coaching as well. It's a useful tool to talk about. But I think, well, one of my examples would be, so I do a bit of mindfulness. So every morning when I make a cup of tea, I stop, I don't rush around, I like stare out the window and I look at nature, and I do mindfulness while the kettle is boiling. It's a simple thing, but it calms me down rather than getting into that stress immediately of the day. And it helps kind of center me a bit. I also, first thing in the morning, I do just 10 minutes of yoga.
Good.
And it's a slightly adapted yoga stretching, because I get lower back pain, particularly because it helps me for that. So again, that helps my mind calm down before rushing into the day. I often get out into nature. So every day I will get out into nature. What other things that I do I do regularly? Exercise. So I'll always go for some kind of, even if it's just light exercise, every day I will get some kind of walk or run or cycle or something in, because I recognize that is very key to my emotional health. And eating well. And
eating well. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a whole load of things, and like I said, it's very every person is different, and I think there are many people that say meditation, for example, works for a lot of people. It personally doesn't work for me. I meditate in a different way. I meditate by playing sport, so I can play sport, and it works for me like a meditation. I'm able to clear my mind because I'm totally focused on the task in hand. Whereas I find meditation very difficult. And I've tried it for many years. I've been on retreats and things, and yes, I do it occasionally, but I find that I can find meditation in other forms.
I agree with you. Some days I don't want to meditate as well.
I think it's important to recognize.
As a yoga teacher, sometimes I run away from meditation.
Yeah, but it's, you know, yoga is not for everyone. You know, I like it, but it's not for everyone. You know, mindfulness is not for everyone. I mean, even getting out into nature, some people don't like that, and they find that you know, journaling maybe is more powerful for them. But everyone has their own tips and tricks, and I think people just need to be encouraged to try things to find out what feels good for them, what makes them feel good and manages their own emotional health, and stick to those. Create a 5 a day.
Fantastic. Everyone is unique, as you said, isn't it? I think Berit is from Universe. Do you know Berit? Just above you in the screen there.
Okay, I haven't got. Yeah, I can I see?
Yeah, she just had a mindfulness course at university with Rona. Remember Rona, our teacher?
Yeah.
Yeah, she did the course now. How was it, Berit? It's good?
Well, it was interesting. I've done mindfulness before because I suffer from very heavy chronic back pain. So I've done it to kind of help with the pain. This was more in relation to the current COVID situation and being stressed. So it was for staff. It was like a 3-hour introduction, and it was quite interesting. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, there wasn't anything totally new to me personally, but it kind of reinforces what I already knew. And she's given us quite a lot of different strategies that we can choose and pick from. So for different types of issues that everyone is currently dealing with. So it was really interesting. Yeah.
Was the popcorn in?
There was no popcorn.
No, okay.
No popcorn at all.
You had to eat the popcorn by appreciating the food.
No.
Or a raisin.
The raisin.
No, there were quite a few practical exercises, but also just a lot of information. I think it was more aimed at people who've not really dabbled with mindfulness at all, whereas I obviously have quite a lot of knowledge about it, even though it's not something I practice, I have to say. But a lot of the staff didn't have a clue, basically, and I think for them it was really quite good. So I think it's slightly different for staff than what is being taught to students, potentially.
Very good. You have a question, by the way?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I do have a question. I mean, I've been communicating with Charlie because I read the book, but it's not a question that just I have. It's in fact a lot. I've discussed with lots of other friends, especially in recent weeks. What we found, we all seem to be dealing with men. Then and you text someone, and then you have a chat, and all of a sudden you don't get an answer for days. Sometimes it could be weeks. We're just wondering why that is, because I mean, talking from my own experience, I'm dealing with someone who at first spoke to me on a daily average of 12 hours a day. We were on the phone, and now communication is pretty close to nothing at all. If once a week, maybe just saying, yeah, okay. If I ask if he's okay. So, you know, it's quite tricky.
I think a lot about this as well with girls.
Yes, and it's not just me, it's a lot of other women that I've recently spoken to, and their men all seem to have kind of, I don't know, withdrawn. Yeah. So
anyone else agree?
Yeah.
Good.
I find that interesting what you just said, because I actually wonder myself about the here's a little theory coming in now, but I don't know, it's old-fashioned perhaps, but because I'm a bit older, but the idea that used to be espoused when I was younger was, can you ever, this is males, can a male ever have a female, heterosexual males, ever have a female friend of the same age that then, you know, and that used to be the case that, I know when I was young, you know, the sort of people that it was always became the gender that a woman thought they could just have a friend, and the man didn't want anything other than, you know, they wanted a relationship. If they couldn't have a relationship, then they stopped being in touch, because they and I was interested in friendship. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I think in my opinion, that is quite an old-fashioned of heterosexual males. I think certainly I find amongst my friendship group, there are, you know, people are very willing to have friends who are women, you know, it's not, and there's no agenda there. I think I know for like my parents' generation, for example, I know it was quite different.
Yeah.
I know my mother would have had friends that were female and wouldn't really have had male friends unless they were my father's friends, for example. But I think that's all very much changed now. I think it's much more equal and accepted. To answer your question,
do you think that, sorry, I wonder whether that equality of being able to be friends across gender has any kind of positive impact on mental health for men or for women and men, that they're socializing beyond their sort of particular gender?
I think it definitely has a benefit for emotional health. I mean, for me, my experience, I opened up to women first about how I was feeling. And to be honest, I've always found it a bit easier to talk to women, but maybe because I'm more of a kind of beta male than I am an alpha male. I've never been a kind of boy's boy lad or anything like that.
So you think that maybe women, in relation to your book, which is about men's mental health,
Yeah.
you think that women are perhaps more inclined to be having those conversations with each other?
100%. And I guess that's the main premise of the book, is to challenge the fact that we don't have the conversations like women do. You know, when a woman, I mean, a classic example actually is when in heterosexual relationships, when a man breaks up with a woman, a man will just isolate. He won't talk to his friends about what's happened. Whereas a woman generally, you know, stereotypically, will talk to her friends and will open up and say, oh, it's really difficult and so on. Whereas a man will just shut down and maybe drink or distract himself with whatever, whether it's exercise or watching football or any, you know, and he'll go to the pub and see his friends, will not talk about it at all. And I think that's what we need to challenge, because, you know, if you think about what's just like stereotypically, what does masculine mean? Masculine means strength. The most traditional stereotypical gender classification of a man is being strong, and so anything that is weak, which is the opposite of strong, is a negative. It's almost like unmanly, unmasculine to show a weakness. And saying I'm really struggling, I'm having a tough time, this has happened, is vulnerable. It's a weakness, and
It's
women
perceived
are
as weakness.
meant to be kind of more I don't know, not, I mean, it's more acceptable for a woman to show weakness in society than a man, and that is whether that's physically or emotionally, and that's what we fundamentally need to shift. And we need to just accept that actually these are not masculine or feminine emotions, they're human emotions, and a woman doesn't feel anything differently to a man. A man just generally is not as good at expressing themselves or talking about it because they're worried about Barrett.
Big debate. And then your question.
It was around men not getting back in touch. So is this to do with someone you think is having some mental health problems?
Yes, let's say that way. Not 100% sure, but I would say 90% sure, because having spoken to friends, and it is someone, not just a friend partner type thing, I'm not quite sure, but he has told me in the past that he did suffer from depression and was abused as a child. So I do think it is someone that definitely suffers from mental health issues.
Yeah,
because he literally just switched from being this person to a totally different person. And it's also this stereotype coming in, 57 years old, male, black, you know, you're not gonna go all fluffy in front of the woman. So, but it's not just me, it's a lot of friends that have partners or relationship with someone that they especially don't live with. So especially because of the COVID situation, and they might not have seen that person in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. No, I can totally associate with that. And I think in my own experience, I know that when I've had bad times in the past, I have isolated myself, whether it's physically or emotionally, and my family kind of know the signs now, because I would start sending very short messages. No detail at all, like very, very functional, no emotion, no. I would just, because you're basically just going into lockdown mode in yourself. And actually, that's the opposite of obviously what is helpful to get you out of this.
I don't think that's a male thing. I think that's just how we sometimes survive.
Okay. Yeah.
Crisis, isn't it? That's a bit of a fight or flight or freeze response where you
do is, I mean, my advice to you would be is to keep trying to get the person to open up. And I think a really good way of getting people to open up is be vulnerable yourself. If someone is vulnerable with you, it's like it opens the door for you to be vulnerable back.
Yeah.
Because like, if they put a piece of themselves out there, would be judged, and you haven't judged them, and then you're able to, you know what I mean? It fosters a better connection that enables sharing and enables openness.
Leave from the book. What's the message that you want people to get it from the book?
Just to open up, just to encourage people to talk about how they're feeling. And obviously it is aimed mainly at men, because I think they have a problem with talking about how they're feeling. And it's massively helpful. And I can advocate that from my own experience. So that's the message, open up.
Fantastic.
Hi,
Girls,
Charlie.
okay,
Sorry, can I?
minutes. Sorry to interrupt. We can continue after, just because Charlie has to go. Is there anything else that has been not answered, and then he can quickly?
Yeah. Hi, Charlie.
Reagan,
Thank you for
yeah,
tuning in.
hello.
I think this is a very important subject that often gets overlooked.
Bit hard to hear, so if you can come close, maybe. That's better.
Can you hear me? Do you have any advice then how to engagement in this conversation? And I think you started touching on it earlier when you were saying about sharing vulnerability.
Yeah.
If you had any other key messages to really engagement and get them involved and start having these.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's tricky, right? I totally recognize you're talking to particularly men who, you know, let's say you're talking to a 40-year-old man who spent 40 years being how he is, right? You're not going to change his habits overnight. So what can you do? Aside from being vulnerable yourself and opening up, I think giving that man the absolute security in the conversation. I think, you know, it took me years to open up to my partner about how I was feeling. And I think I felt like I'd be judged, or that, I don't know, I thought that it would be negative for me to show my true self. So I think if you can somehow create an environment, whether it's verbally saying, look, I totally accept you, like warts and all, whatever, you know, that expression, like in every way, like I understand if there's anything you want to tell me, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to support you. And I won't be judging you. I won't be telling people about anything. I think just providing an environment of complete security is definitely helpful, as well as being vulnerable yourself. And I think also maybe pointing out, you know, we are in a changing culture and men are starting to open up. You know, you look at the royal family, right? And you look at lots of celebrities out there are starting to talk about this stuff. And lots of normal people as well, like me. So I think when men start to see how this is normalizing, and that it's acceptable, it's socially acceptable, and hopefully in the future it will actually be socially celebrated. Like it'll be not just accepted, but actually celebrated when people open up. I think if you can share content or messages or any kind of information with men you believe maybe to be struggling, or just men you want to have deep connections with, benefits of opening up, that might help as well, maybe.
I think that's a good
You're
message.
cooking, can you shut your mic? Sorry, Karin's always cooking behind the scenes. No, that's fine. That's amazing, Charlie. I think you is about to go, have 2 minutes. Just quickly, let's see, I think I asked all my questions. If I didn't ask, you have answered. But I remember you, once we got the train and we're going somewhere, I mean, you're going to the station or something like that. And we quickly talked, but I remember you saying, I wrote a book and I'm about to launch it, and I feel I'm very anxious about it, or because I exposing myself. I remember you saying that. Absolutely. And how do you feel now that the vulnerability that you were scared of actually is attracting more people and making people connect to you and talk more. So how is this change of the anxiety of, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen, then you expose yourself and then you have a good result?
That's a good question. And I did say that, and I was nervous about it, and I still find myself nervous because, you know, I talk about personal things in there. I talk about, you know, having suicidal thoughts, and the thought of friends of mine reading that and kind of going, really, you know. And I'm a classic case, as I start saying in the book, I'm a classic case of someone who looks very successful on the outside, you know, things look all rosy, and I'm a bit like a duck, right? I'm doing fine on the surface, and I'm paddling like crazy underneath. But people don't see that, and they just assume that everything is fine. So I was very anxious and nervous about revealing my real self to people, and obviously I had beforehand to close family, but this is like public, right? This is super public.
This is true vulnerability, which is bravery. So thank you for doing that. We need it.
Thank you for that comment. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's been lovely because I've had people emailing me, messaging me directly saying, "Oh my God, this really resonates with me. I totally get where you're coming from here," and so that's why I did it, right? So, you know, so guys out there kind of going, "Oh, this actually makes sense," and maybe they will then, it'll encourage them to be more open in themselves because they see that it's normal. What they're feeling, the fact that they're really struggling, is totally okay. I mean, we all go through hardship in life, right? I mean, a lot of my other thing I talk about in the book is that I was really badly bullied. I think a lot of my emotional difficulties have come from being bullied really badly for 2 years, to the point where I ended up getting taken out of school and everything. And I remember actually when I give you a little side story to that. I met up with the guy who bullied me about 2 years ago, and so that's 20 odd years after he actually was bullying me. And that level of vulnerability was amazing. Like that kind of like opening up to this guy who had made my life a living hell for 2 years, like physically bullying me, emotionally bullying me, excluding, and speaking to him on the phone and then meeting up with him in person was an insanely intense and like a relief. It was like a massive emotional burden lifted because I'd been open to having that conversation. So yeah, I mean, vulnerability comes in many forms, right? Yeah.
What did he say?
What did he say?
Yeah.
He was very, very apologetic. Well, when I called him up, I mean, it's funny because I said to him, "I bet you don't even remember me." And he said to me, "Of course I remember you. I've been thinking about contacting you for the last 10 years.
Wow.
It's like sent shivers down my spine. And then actually, get this, he then said, he then basically recounted my CV. He said, "I know about this business. I know you've done this and like this." And I was like, "Shit, that's weird. You know, you've basically been following me." And he'd been obviously following me to kind of check that he hadn't completely screwed me up. Yeah, and then I put down the phone after that conversation, and I literally just like broke down. It was a very weird. I called up my partner immediately afterwards, and I couldn't speak. She thought someone had died. I was literally like I could not get words out. It was like, and the only way I can describe it is like I felt like I was that 13-year-old boy again. It was a very, very strange experience, but again, very, very powerful and very helpful for me in kind of dealing with my kind of emotional challenges. So yeah, he was very, very, to answer your question originally, he was very, very apologetic, and obviously like we met up and he was like, "Is there anything I can do? Then let me know. I'm so sorry that I did." Actually, amazingly, he I'm just remembering things as I talk now. He said, he told me about lots of things that had happened that I could not remember. Like I blocked them from my mind. Like literally, I left that school and everything had just like, it's like it was really strange. Like so many things. Like, do you remember when we did this to you? Or do you remember when this happened? And I literally, no recollection at all. Really strange. But I guess that's probably like a protection mechanism.
Yeah.
Interesting. You say 30 years old. Sorry, I know you have to go. But my son had similar thing at the school, and he went to 1 year of panic attack. he lost his balance. I remember once he went to the hospital, had to come with a wheelchair. It affected his mind. It was horrible. Now he's good. He changed school as well, and he went to another school, and now he's like super popular, super confident. He healed, you know. But the call of that one person to him would trigger everything again in his body, you know. So the memory, and he'll collapse into panic again, just for hearing the voice of that person. And you know, it's really strong. And I think a lot of other people from this age, they suffer the same. You know, I know about girls that suffer the same, you know, from bullying. They become with these problems of anxiety as well. So it's a very good thing that you did, you know. I'm looking forward for my son to read. I haven't given the book because I was going to talk to you, but I'm going to pass on to him the book, and I'm looking forward for him to read. Really.
Thank you. Well, I hope it resonates with him. But it's definitely, I mean, I think you need to, yes, be careful, as you said. If your son is going to meet up with this guy who bullied him and it's going to relive all that, I think, there's some care that needs to be taken, and maybe alongside therapy could be an idea.
Yeah, he did CBT and everything for 1 year, so was good. Now he became stronger now. I think
it might not be everybody's thing to go and meet the person that sort of perpetrated something on them. And I think it sounds like you had quite a positive experience there.
And I've spoken to other people who haven't had that positive experience. Absolutely. I mean, that's a caveat that, like, I mean, I spoke to a guy quite recently who did a very similar thing, and well, actually the bully contacted him, and he said for about a year afterwards he was reliving it all. So yeah, I think it's certainly not for everyone, and maybe it should be done in line with support.
What triggered you to get in contact with him? Do you think that you'd done some enough work perhaps with yourself by that point, that you were feeling resilient?
I guess like I said, I've been on a journey for like 10 years. I was probably about 8 years into that, and I did something called the Landmark Forum. Have you ever heard of that? Which is, I'm reluctant to promote it because it's a bit of it's a very strange organization. Barrett's nodding. Very Americanized personal development weekend, let's say. You go for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like 8 in the morning till 10 at night, super intensive 3-hour sessions, like 10-minute breaks. And effectively, I think what they do is they break down your identity and you kind of try and build it back up. But it's a very weird, people have very, very emotional experiences on it. And anyway, they encourage you to, during that process, to contact people you have unresolved stuff with. So for example, like during the process, I called my sister up and I had some things about her, and we had a very heartfelt conversation, probably the most heartfelt I've ever had with her in my life. And then afterwards, I decided to contact the bully. So that was what triggered me to do it.
Fantastic. I don't want to hold you much because I think you gotta go. I'm not gonna ask it more questions, unfortunately, due to time. Did you enjoy it? The presence of
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are you gonna read the book? Are you gonna read and recommend?
I already have.
I really recommend that. It's really good, insightful. It makes a massive difference. I learned this thing about vulnerability that you're saying. I learned to be more like not try to be perfect, and I really try to apply that, and it worked for me. Now, for example, my video positive psychology, the introduction to positive psychology, I did thinking about vulnerability, because before I was thinking, oh, it has to be perfect, I have to know what to say, and da da da. And I said, no. But Charlie said that people connect with vulnerability. And that thing made me, okay, I'm just gonna read, and the next one will be better, and that's it. And I got people, including Yannick, and other personalities of psychology, and colleagues saying, you shouldn't maybe not read that much and stuff. I said, I know that, I did that on purpose. I wanted people to connect to me. And he agreed with that. So thank you for that. It makes you a bit more.
Pleasure. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, you're very welcome to. I can be found on Instagram at slow down, do less is my general philosophy.
Oh yeah, I can put in the post, but you have here in your book, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in there as well. But if anyone wants, you were happy to. You can send me a message if you want to ask any more questions, or Barrett, if I fully answer.
Okay. Then you can take a screenshot of the.
Want to ask me any more chat about that, I'm very, very open
I'm
to.
gonna put here, gonna put there later. Okay. Yeah, so you also coach, isn't it, Charlie?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so if you need coach, I know some people ask me sometimes, I'm busy, go for Charlie. I'm gonna send you people as well, Charlie, because I think now is a big issue. Everyone has some kind of mental health, and I think it's best always to try to have these things than going for other heavy, more like heavy, let's say, whatever, more chemical things, you know. So you can always try to go for therapy before other things.
I'm actually reading a very good book at the moment that you might find good as well. It's called Lost Connections. I don't know if you've heard that. It's and it all talks about how, yeah, it's very antidepressants, but I mean, antidepressants definitely have a place, by the way, as well. But they just need to be used carefully, I think. But it talks about fundamentally what is wrong with society, i.e. we've lost connection with other people, with our work, with our values, you know, and the way to actually better emotional health is through reconnection with those things.
What's the author?
Well, who's the author?
Yeah.
Johann Hari, I think, with a J.
Fantastic. Yeah, sometimes we exchange books here in the group, isn't it? Take picture of this.
I was wondering if you'd read any Brené Brown when you were talking about vulnerability.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, big fan. Big fan.
Yeah.
Who was that? Sorry, what was the name of that?
Brené Brown.
Rennie.
She's got like probably one of the most watched TED Talks online. If you watch that TED Talk, it's very, very good.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
Probably like the leading thinker on. There we go.
This is bad.
And shame. It's very interesting. On if you look at her stuff on shame, it's very interesting.
Brené Brown. Okay.
Yeah, check her out.
Fantastic.
Very
Great. So you enjoyed Charlie visit, girls?
Very much. Thank you very much.
Charlie, can I just say, I like the title of your book. I like the fact you said "man down" instead of "man up." I think that's a really good title. Excellent. Thank you very much. It was really interesting.
Pleasure. Nice
Did you learn anything from us, Charlie?
Happy lockdown. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.